station. We're going to be here with you the entire trip.
Immediately after Dragon separated from Falcon 9, it began what we call activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. During this phase, Dragon is configured for on-orbit operations. The phase begins after separation of Dragon from Falcon 9 and ends with the completion of the final co-elliptic burn. Our initial orbit today is 190 kilometers by 205 kilometers, with those values representing the perigee and apogee of the orbit, or the lowest and highest points over the Earth. That means the orbit isn't a perfect circle, but more like a slight ellipse.
Over the next 19 hours, Dragon's going to execute a series of burns which will gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the station. There are going to be 5 major burns or firing of those Draco thrusters on Dragon that are going to bring it close to station before we begin our final approach maneuvers. The first one is coming up in just a little bit, and it's the phase burn. Right now, teams are doing their go-no-go to get ready for that, and it's performed at the first apogee, or the highest point, of the initial orbit, and that's going to raise Dragon's perigee to a higher altitude.
And after a calculated time, which is based on what our orbital data shows us, the boost burn raises Dragon's orbit until it's just 10 kilometers lower than the space station, followed soon after by the close co-elliptic burn to place Dragon on orbit roughly co-elliptic with the space station. This means Bob and Doug will be about 10 kilometers lower than the station during their entire orbit around the Earth. The fourth maneuver is the transfer burn, where we raise Dragon's apogee, or highest point of its orbit, to just 2.5 kilometers below the station. And we round everything out with a final co-elliptic burn to once again maintain a constant orbit beneath station. It's just 2.5 kilometers below.
Then we get into the approach initiation and final stages of Dragon's rendezvous with the space station. This is also where we start what we call joint operations between the Dragon control team here in Hawthorne and the space station flight controllers in Mission Control Houston. The teams transition to those integrated ops roughly 45 minutes prior to approach initiation, which is another burn that really means Dragon's getting close. During the approach, SpaceX flight controllers work in tandem with the NASA team in Houston to activate and test out a number of systems on Dragon, including establishing bidirectional communications with the station using a system known as C2V2, which stands for Common Communications for Visiting Vehicles. They also set up a data stream from Dragon to the station, just giving another path for Dragon telemetry or data about its performance to come down to the ground and giving an additional command capability to astronauts on board the station. They'll also maneuver Dragon to the proper attitude and then initialize the navigation sensors used for that very slow and methodical approach to station.
At approximately 5:24 a.m. Pacific time, that's tomorrow morning, Draco thrusters on Dragon will fire for the approach initiation burn when Dragon is about 2.5 kilometers below station and just about 7 kilometers behind it. This will swing Dragon up until it is about 400 meters directly below the station, and this maneuver will also move Dragon inside one of those 2 safety zones around the station that requires a set of go-no-go pulls with the different control teams. The first zone is called the approach ellipsoid, which is an imaginary shape measuring about 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, which is essentially a large 3-dimensional oval. Before Dragon is given permission to move inside the ellipsoid, referred to by the teams as the AE, it is configured to be on what is known as a 24-hour safe trajectory. This means that if Dragon lost all control...
Dragon, SpaceX for update and burn briefing.
If Dragon lost all control to its thrusters, it would be at least 24 hours before its...
Go ahead, Jay.
...trajectory would move inside the approach ellipsoid.
Okay. For suit doffing, we're still waiting for cabin to be below 25C and trending down. It looks like it's on the way there, but not quite. And the second item is during the burn, we may have intermittent comm and due to pointing, and this is expected.
We're just listening.
Okay, copy the cabin temp and suit doffing and intermittent comm during the burn.
Good readback, and we are go for the phase burn. Looks like it's in about 12 minutes.
Track. Dragon go for the phase burn.
We're just getting a couple of quick updates. They're still wearing those suits that they've been in since we saw them suit up in the O&C building several hours ago. Once temperature just comes down inside the cabin a little bit, they'll get to go to doff or just take their suits off. And you just heard we're less than 12 minutes now from that first burn called the phase burn. Getting back to where we're going to be tomorrow, though, once Dragon arrives at just 400 meters below the station, it's going to be what's known as Waypoint Zero, and that's the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold at 400 meters, or it can continue on if all the systems check out, and then it'll begin the approach to Waypoint 1. By this point, the teams will do a go, no-go for Dragon to move inside the keep-out sphere. It's another one of those zones around the station, and it's an imaginary sphere with a radius of about 200 meters. It's just another chance to confirm all the guidance, navigation, and control systems are working correctly on Dragon before we move it in really close to station. And it carries a similar requirement to the AE that Jesse talked about, where if Dragon lost all control of its thrusters, it would not go inside of that sphere for at least 4 orbits or about 6 hours instead of the 24 hours for the approach ellipsoid.
Dragon's move from Waypoint 0 to Waypoint 1 will swing it up and out in front of the station, pausing at a distance of approximately 220 meters. At this point, it will be on what we call the docking axis, which essentially means it is directly in front of the docking port. Bob and Doug are headed to the forwardmost port of the International Space Station, the Node 2 forward port. That is where Dragon docked last year on the Demo 1 mission and where one of the 2 international docking adapters is located. These were installed for new commercial spacecraft flights and any other future spacecraft that also use the international docking standard.
Before moving into the final waypoint, the crew will execute their second manual flight test, except this time they'll be in what we call the near field. That just means they're close to the station. The crew will actually command a hold when they're 220 meters away from the station and conduct a series of maneuvers. So it'll be Doug and Bob at the controls. First, they'll fly Dragon to the center line of the docking approach, just precisely lining it up with that docking port. Then they'll do a number of translational maneuvers, so using the Draco thrusters on Dragon to move it around the different axes. And then they'll always be checking in with the ground on how much propellant is used. Again, translational is just you're moving back, forward, side to side. When we refer to attitude maneuvers, it's where you're pointing. But once they're complete with that, they'll transition control back over to the Dragon flight computer to resume that automated docking.
And once Dragon is only 20 meters away from Waypoint 2, that the spacecraft focuses on aligning its docking system with the docking adapter. Dragon will then fly in and make contact with the IDA, giving us what we call a soft capture. The soft capture ring then retracts until sensors indicate it's time for hooks to drive in place to give us a hard capture and firmly secure Dragon to the station. Then it's time for leak checks and hatch opening, which is currently timelined to come about 2 hours following docking.
We're going to be here with you the entire way, and again, it's going to be a 2-team effort once Dragon gets really close. So why don't we jump over to Gary, International Space Houston. It's got to be exciting seeing that launch and knowing that they're on the way to you. How's the team doing, Gary?
Dan, there is allotment from the room. We are closely monitoring Dragon's few burns that are coming up here. You both did a great job of describing some of those. From the International Space Station side of things, we're really in a monitor mode for much of the flight. Once it gets closer to some of the docking portion of the flight that you were going through, that's when we'll start really kicking into gear for joint operations. Just when the Dragon is just about 80 kilometers away, we'll start doing our checkouts of a system called C2V2. That's the communication system. Dragon, through the most of its flight, will be talking or communicating with the TDRS satellites, the geosynchronous satellites around the Earth. Right about the 80-kilometer part, we'll be turning on the C2V2. That is the common communication for visiting vehicles and establishes a link between the International Space Station and Dragon. It'll be turned on for some S-band connections and testing some of the radio signals as Dragon makes its approach. Really, though, we'll be monitoring the approach through some of those final burns once it's in front of the International Space Station. The space station has a few things that it needs to do from the attitude control side of things to really prepare the station for docking, switching some of the thrusters over to the Russian side and really relying on those control moment gyros and the angular momentum there to keep the International Space Station nice and steady. Once it makes its approach, it'll really be up to Bob and Doug to perform those final maneuvers and into docking. Chris Cassidy, though, will be monitoring from the inside. He's got a tool called the RPOP, and he'll be monitoring the approach from the inside of the International Space Station. Chris Cassidy, through the past couple days, has been preparing the International Space Station for Bob and Doug, getting some of the beds that they'll be sleeping in on the International Space Station ready, really preparing some of the tools that he'll use for the monitoring, and then when Doug and Bob are nice and close to the International Space Station, opening up the hatch and getting some air right between the hatch where Bob and Doug will enter the International Space Station. Everything's still looking good from the space station side of things. We should be exiting a loss of communication now and going back and getting some views from station. Still having great views from Bob and Doug incrementally. We'll be following right along through the duration of this flight until it docks just 19 hours from now. That's it from us in here in Mission Control Houston. Dan, I'll send it back to you over in Hawthorne.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Now joining me here in Hawthorne, though, we'll get her a second to get mic'd up and everything, but SpaceX's Kate Tice, who was with us for Demo 1, we got to do the splashdown together. Now we're going to do kind of that initial flight on orbit with Bob and Doug. So, Kate, thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Tice. I'm a senior engineer here at SpaceX. Really excited to be joining you for the Demo 2 webcast here with Dan, like he said, in front of mission headquarters here in Hawthorne. So, like he was saying before, Dragon is going to be performing a couple of different things going on in the next few hours. We're going to have 5 major burns, but at the moment we are coming up to the first burn, which is the phase burn.
And that's going to be, again, the first firing of those thrusters, those Draco thrusters. It'll be using both the forward bulkhead, so the ones that were uncovered by that nose cone, and also the ones around the service section or around kind of the bottom portion. And we've been looking at our timeline, and it's expected to last about 492 seconds is what they have it in there. So it's going to be a fairly long firing. And again, these are done just to gradually raise up the orbit. So essentially what we're doing is we're waiting until we're at the highest point of our orbit over the Earth. We're firing the thrusters, and that raises up the lowest point of our orbit. And then we just circle everything out with what we call a co-elliptic burn once we get back to that other side of the orbit. So they're going to just gradually do that over the coming hours until they're at the International Space Station. And then it's time for docking.
Yeah. So, like Dan said, we have a total of 12 Draco thrusters on board of Dragon. In addition to the 4 bulkhead Draco thrusters, which we'll be using upcoming, there are 12 more Dracos in the service section, which is the area along the lower part of the Dragon capsule. These will be used in every burn and are primarily there to help maintain Dragon's attitude, which is especially important when doing the finely tuned approach into docking. Now, they can also be used for smaller translational maneuvers, but right now we're approaching the phase burn, and that should be about 3 minutes.
Yep. So we're just going to continue to stand by, wait for that phase burn. That'll be the first major on-orbit event since they've done all of their checkouts and the nose cone is open. And then we'll be standing by. We should be having the first manual flight test coming up in just about 50 minutes from now if everything goes well. So that'll be our first chance to watch Bob and Doug actually fly Dragon. And so, I mean, that's going to be really cool. Again, it's designed to fly itself the entire time, but it's the crew has the ability to step in should they need it, and they'll actually be stepping in and taking control. So they'll be flying a brand new spacecraft for the very first time. Yeah, something that I like to remind my friends and family, as we've been leading up to this launch for the last several days, this is a demonstration mission, and so like that far-field manual flight test that we'll have coming up a little bit later, Bob and Doug, they're test pilots. This kind of mission is what they live for.
for. If I remember correctly, it was 1981. Shuttle Columbia was the last time that we tested a completely new vehicle. So it's been a long time since anybody has had the opportunity to do a test flight like Bob and Doug are doing today and will be continuing to do for the next 19 hours. So that opportunity for them
Dragon SpaceX for suit doffing plan.
That opportunity for them to take control of the Dragon capsule if, for some reason that they need to, that is one of the test objectives.
Yeah, we're right now, cabin environments are stable. Our plan is to give you the go for suit doffing after the phase burn. And we are seeing Draco Orbit 2, Draco 4 is a little bit a low temperature out of family. We're not tracking any immediate concerns, but just wanted to make you aware that we are looking into that.
Okay, copy that. SpaceX will plan on suit doffing after the burn, and then the Orbit 2 Draco 4's low temp.
Good read back.
All right, so the crew is going to stay in their suits until after this phase burn, which we should be hearing start in just about a minute from now. All right, we should be just 10
GNC
seconds
confirms
away
good
from
deorbit
this
burn.
burn. And we have confirmation the first burn is in progress. Again, this is the first of the 5 major maneuvers. This one's called the phase burn, using those forward bulkhead thrusters. So just those 4 Dracos at the very top underneath the nose cone to do these what we call delta V maneuvers. So just big changes in velocity that we're going to do to gradually raise this orbit up over the coming hours. Mm-hmm. So we're watching some of the screens. We're able to see the burn is in progress. It's expected to last for several minutes. So we'll just keep an ear out, make sure that everything goes well, and then we'll get a report pretty much the same time the crew does on how the burn goes. So we're really just looking for those words, good burn, after it's complete.
Like we said, this is the first of 5 major burns that we will be performing over the coming hours. So this is basically the first major step in the free flight of Demo 2.
Expected loss of signal, Diego Garcia.
We're about 2 minutes into our phase burn. Everything looking good so far.
And Dragon SpaceX for awareness, burn is nominal so far.
All right, we have confirmation that burn is nominal thus far.
We concur, thank you.
And again, Bob and Doug have insight into how this is going the whole way just through those touchscreen control panel that they have right in front of them, those 3 screens. And when we get video inside the cabin back, hopefully as we're doing that manual flight test, you'll be able to get a really good close-up look at how they kind of have their window into Dragon itself. And we are coming up on 3 minutes into our first major burn for their on-orbit path to the station. You're just now joining, we are 3 minutes 45 seconds into the phase burn. This is the first major burn. You're getting a look inside of the SpaceX Mission Control Center here in Hawthorne. This is the team that's going to be responsible for looking over Dragon and Bob and Doug on their flight up to the International Space Station. We'll have some intermittent video comm with the Dragon spacecraft itself, only when we're over some ground stations and only when we're doing some of these different maneuvers. But right now, we're just continuing to listen in. That first burn's going well. Every single one of these burns is critical to actually making it to the International Space Station. So it seems like a pretty quiet time right now, but I mean, thrusters are firing on the Dragon spacecraft as we speak. They've been doing so for over 4.5 minutes. So we've got a little under 3 minutes to go, I think. Everything's looking good so far.
Dan, I remember during the Demo 1 splashdown or deorbit, basically leaving the International Space Station webcast, you know, we were going back and forth saying that it feels like it takes forever to do anything. And it's the same deal going up to the ISS. Everything is super controlled, very precise and very exact in terms of timing and adjustments. So, like Dan said, this is a critical moment and definitely one of the first exciting events that we have in Dragon as it now is free flying.
And just to let you know, anytime we have video with the crew during the flight, we'll do our best to bring it to you. So we're just getting a quick check-in on the teams in Mission Control and Hawthorne. I mean, these are the people behind the scenes who have done so much just to get us to this day, taking part in simulations and mission planning with the crew themselves. I mean, you're talking countless hours just to really rehearse everything for this flight before we get here, and we're here.
Yeah.
We had that successful launch, which still haven't come down from. That was incredible, and everything has gone smoothly so far. Good initial orbit. The burn started right on time, and it sounds like it's going well so far. We are just almost 6 minutes into the burn, so should be just about a minute or so left.
Like you've heard us say many times on today's webcast, prior to launch and after launch, you know, Bob and Doug have rehearsed every single procedure with the SpaceX team for this mission. So everything that they're doing now and have done all day, despite the unfortunate scrub that we had earlier in the week, was just an extra practice test, which was awesome. But you know, it was nothing new for them. They had rehearsed everything, and same goes with this. All of the procedures that we are running through now, and will continue to run through all through the duration of the mission. Bob and Doug have, you know, they are super familiar with what's going to happen and what they're expected to do.
And we should be coming up near the end of the phase burn. Again, this is the first in 5. The next major one's going to be the boost burn. That's going to raise their orbit up to just about 10 kilometers below the station itself. And so they're just going to get closer and closer in these incremental steps. And you'll see in this graphic that when they do these burns, it looks like they're kind of doing a little bit of a loop-de-loop. This graph is in relation to the space station itself. So on one axis, the Y, you have how far below you are, and on the X, how far behind the station you still are. It's not perfectly to scale.
Dragon, SpaceX, nominal burn.
Nominal burn.
And we just heard the two words we were hoping for, nominal burn. So 1 burn out of 5 checked. And so that was the first one. The next one coming up is going to be the boost burn in about an hour and 24 minutes. Before they get to that, though, we are going to be looking forward to that manual flight test where they're going to be taking the reins and they're going to be taking control of Dragon itself.
Yeah, so in preparation for that moment, I highly encourage you all to check out the simulation that we have on SpaceX.com. It's actually an awesome opportunity for you to test your own skills at steering.
Hey, Dragon, SpaceX, we are disabling cameras, and you are go for suit doffing and on-orbit cabin configuration. Note that camera caps, which will be tethered, can be found in location 8, and cameras are currently configured.
Yeah, so as I was...
Okay, Dragon copy, suit doffing in work. We see that the cameras are off, and we can do on-orbit activation.
Copy all. And Dragon, also at your convenience, if you can confirm the gas detectors are off location 14.
Welcome.
Okay, so what's going on at this point is Bob and Doug now have the opportunity to take their suits off. This is referred to as doffing, as donning is actually putting the suits on. They'll actually be able to remove those suits at this time, get a little bit more comfortable in the cabin, and they'll be putting those suits back on when they get closer to the International Space Station. And like I was saying before, I highly encourage you all to check out the simulation that we have online where you can test out your skills at steering Dragon and docking it to the International Space Station. That website is iss.sim.spacex.com. And like I said, you can test your own skills at flying Dragon.
And Dragon SpaceX, one additional note, no need to reply, but the next burn will be the boost burn. And that's in about 1 hour and 23 minutes per your timeline.
All right.
We copy, thank you.
Yeah, definitely give the Crew Dragon docking demonstration a try. It's a lot of fun. It gives you a pretty good appreciation of just how difficult it is to fly and maneuver in space when you're not just thinking about going forward and backward. You have every axis imaginable that you have to worry about. Took me a couple of tries. I know those first couple I got impatient and flew in way too quickly, and then one time started to spin pretty wildly out of control. So it's probably a good thing I'm down here and they're up there, but it's a lot of fun to check out.
Yeah, I was also really surprised at how many levels of control there are and how difficult it is to actually get them all to work in sync at the right speeds. Of everyone that I've spoken to that has tried it out first, it's unanimous. Everyone went too fast the first couple tries. I was the same. Although by my third or fourth try, I'm happy to say that my decades of Star Fox 64 training finally paid off. And I did. I managed to dock to the station after practicing a few times.
SpaceX Dragon. Check.
And Dragon, you were a little broken, but I did copy you.
How about this time? How you hear on the cabin mic?
Loud and clear on the cabin mic.
Copy that.
We have you the same.
Well, with that first burn nominal and out of the way, the next one coming up in a little over an hour and 20 minutes from now, the next thing we're really going to be looking forward to is this manual free flight. So as we've said quite a bit, Crew Dragon is designed to fly fully autonomous, meaning the spacecraft does all of the navigating and burns to the station all on its own. There are manual override controls, though, on the spacecraft that enables the astronauts to step in, take control should any issues arise. And to test out those controls, Bob and Doug are about to do the first of 2 planned manual maneuvers inside Dragon.
So they'll be using the touchscreen controls that we've seen at various points in the webcast, the crew display panel, and they'll practice putting Dragon in what's known as LVLH attitude. LVLH, or local vertical, local horizontal configuration, means that they'll use Earth itself as a guide and reorient Dragon with the nose cone pointing forward, and the bottom of Dragon, and at the bottom of Dragon, at least from where Bob and Doug are sitting, the Earth will be directly below them. So think of it as they'll basically be putting Dragon in the same orientation as an airplane flying over Earth.
And they'll be taking this manual control, but they'll stop one step before actually sending the command of their attitude adjustments to Dragon's flight computer. So the flight computer itself is still going to continue flying Dragon, and as soon as they're done, they'll hand control back over. The flight computer will reorient Dragon, and it will continue on its way. It's going to fly in a whole bunch of different attitudes on the way up to station. Unlike the space station pretty much only flies in that LVLH. It's pretty much always going the same direction, but that's because it's got very big joints for the solar arrays to rotate around. For Dragon, they'll have to maneuver the trunk to charge the batteries, maneuver to sometimes communicate with the different satellites, depending on which antennas they're using. And so this LVLH will just be a test for this manual flight test.
Exactly. And like we said before, there is that simulation online where you can check it out for yourself.
Yeah, definitely get a chance to go pilot Dragon. We're going to be seeing that tomorrow morning. It was surreal when we got to see it on Demo 1 with Dragon coming in. We've got some great cameras right on that docking port where Dragon's going to be pointed. It's going to be really exciting to see them come in for that final approach.
Dragon SpaceX, no response required, but we are going to be enabling branch 2 of the helium system. This is expected to be done on orbit to protect for a scrub. And Dragon SpaceX, this is just clarification. This will get us back into the expected on-orbit config.
Dragon copies. Dragon SpaceX prop reconfiguration is complete and expected.
And if you're just now tuning in, you missed the launch, so you might want to head online and make sure you go back and check that out. But Bob Bank and Doug Hurley, our two NASA astronauts, are flying through outer space right now after that successful launch just a little while ago. We're going to be bringing you this ground track that you're looking at. You're going to be able to see exactly where Dragon is over planet Earth, and you're going to see a number of different lines, so usually 3 at a time. And so what that is showing is each of those orbits around planet Earth for the Dragon spacecraft. And it looks like it's wavy, but that's because you're taking a globe and then stretching it out flat. And so that's why it looks like, so it is a straight line if you were actually looking at it around the globe. So with that on-time launch, they've already traveled well away from the Kennedy Space Center. They're already downrange, way in excess of 600 miles. But they're going to continue to fly around the planet Earth. They're going to continue to raise their orbit over the next 19 hours. They were successful in doing so with their first burn, the phase burn. That was done.
And SpaceX Dragon for suit doffing. We started a timer for the drying of both suits about 4.5 minutes ago, if you guys want to back us up.
Copy. Timer started for suit drying 4.5 minutes ago. We'll back you up.
And that was the Demo 2 Commander Doug Hurley talking to the core behind us right here in Mission Control Hawthorne. The crew is doffed, and they kind of hang it up, almost like hanging up your clothes just to dry. And they're going to continue to they have a timer just to know when they're fine to just pack them away. They're not going to have to put those suits on again until tomorrow when it's time to dock with the space station.
Quick, I want to comment there on the view on the right-hand side of your screen. That is, if Bob and Doug were looking out the window, that's basically what they'd be seeing right now. That's a live shot from Dragon, and with planet Earth rotating below it. But
yeah, they're going to continue to make their way up over the next couple of hours. We have a number of items coming up for them, though. We are still counting down to that manual flight test. That should be coming up within the next half hour, and that's going to be Bob and Doug actually taking control of the Dragon spacecraft for the very first time. So that's going to be really exciting. Hopefully we'll get some video inside of the cabin. We'll have video inside the cabin anytime that the crew is ready for us to come on board. And anytime we have connection through ground stations, through SpaceX's worldwide network of ground stations to communicate with the spacecraft.
Yeah, and just real quick, I want to correct myself now that I can see the image a little better. That's actually a live shot from the International Space Station.
I thought it looked like a radiator.
Yeah, for a second I thought it was the Dragon trunk there. But nope, that is the ISS, so that's where Bob and Doug are heading. And like we have been saying so far, this is just the beginning of what is a 19-hour journey for them. So they've got a lot of stuff coming up. Like we've been saying, there are 5 main burns. We've completed the first of those 5 main burns, and they will be going to sleep in a while. Well, they'll eat first, and then they'll get to sleep. And that sleep portion of the mission is actually really important because we need them to be really well rested and comfortable whenever they start doing the approach phases to the International Space Station. So they get scheduled 8 hours, if I remember correctly. Yep. And I mean, you can see whenever we had the views inside of Dragon earlier, you can see that
SpaceX Dragon 4.300 is complete.
Copy. 4.300 complete.
So again, that's Bob and Doug just getting the cabin configured. They're out of their suits, getting a little bit more comfortable, and then hopefully we'll be getting to that manual flight test in just a little while. Yeah, they'll have about 8 hours of sleep scheduled. I don't know how you can go to sleep on a day like today, but I also don't know how they were as calm and collected as they were. So again, you're dealing with some special people when you're flying somebody into space.
For sure. And as we saw from our views inside the cabin earlier, they will be sitting in a sitting position while they're sleeping. Whereas on the International